favorite flowering plant, or in this case, it's going to be plants of the month. And this is the month of June. Started this series last month with gardenias, and gardenias bloom heavily here in my area starting toward the end of May, and they're still actually blooming into early June. Basically, in this series of videos, I'm just going back through my phone for the last 5 or 6 years and going, hey, what drew my attention the most during that month? And definitely during the month of June, it was hydrangeas. There's no question that hydrangeas get the majority of my data storage from my phone during the month of June. It may be different in your area. We're in Zone 7B in Raleigh, North Carolina, but during the month of June, we'll get all the major species of hydrangeas blooming some point during the month. And so the earliest of the flowering hydrangeas in our area are one of the native hydrangeas, which is Hydrangea quercifolia or Oakleaf hydrangeas. And Oakleaf hydrangeas come in all sizes and shapes. So we have very, very large growing Oakleaf hydrangeas with big, giant inflorescences on them in a panicle shape. So we have different shapes on these flowers. That's one thing I want you to keep in mind. So you're going to have panicle shape, and we'll have a couple with, kind of a triangular pyramidal shape for the flowers, and then we'll have mop heads, these kind of round balls like this, and then we'll have lace caps, which are like flat clusters of flowers. So these are different hydrangea species, of which there's like 75 different species of hydrangeas. We typically in ornamental landscaping only use 5 or 6 that I'll go through real quick, and they all happen to overlap here in June. But again, back to the Oakleafs. They're actually native to stream banks and stream beds, and we tend to put them in really dry spaces in our gardens. They don't want to be planted in wet spaces, but they definitely would like to be watered occasionally to perform at their best in our ornamental gardens. So keep that in mind. But again, Oakleaf hydrangeas can get 15 feet in height, and now we have new ones that can be kept much smaller. The flowers clusters tend to be a little smaller too, but the plants are way more compact. Leaves are smaller. Great thing about Oakleafs is a 4-season plant. So I'm talking about flowers, and they're the earliest. They start in May for us, and they're still blooming here into early June. But then they get great fall color, great winter interest. The leaves are beautiful. That's really probably the best 4-season hydrangea that we have. And again, the earliest to bloom in my area. In cooler areas, they're hardy up to 5 to 9. Up in the cooler areas, some of the flowers will take on a pink hue. So they'll start this kind of greenish color that a lot of these hydrangeas start, and then they'll color up whatever color they're going to be. Mostly on Oakleaf hydrangeas, that's going to be white. And then they'll color up into pinks and some of them red and that kind of thing before they go to that kind of papery look that they have during the late fall and winter time. All of them kind of head toward that direction. All of them make great cut flowers. The next group that go off are the Hydrangea macrophyllas and the Hydrangea serratas. So Hydrangea serratas we refer to a lot of times as mountain hydrangeas. But the Hydrangea macs or macrophyllas, they're the most, maybe the most beloved of all the hydrangeas. They come in shades of between white, and the white ones are not really manipulatable. The white ones are white, and then shades of pink and blue and purple, and those are manipulatable by the soil type. So if you have acid soil, they tend to be bluer, up to purple, and if you have alkaline soils, they tend to be on the pinker side. Some aluminum does need to be present as well to have this blue coloration. The macrophyllas are going to come in 2 basic shapes. You're going to have the mop heads like this, which are just kind of a round shape and a ball. This one, Dear Dolores, these are about 8 inches across, something like that. On all these hydrangeas, the blue part that you're looking at here is actually a sterile flower or a sepal. There's no part of that is not going to form a seed. It's the only thing it's doing is drawing attention. If you kind of go down here into the middle of the flower, or the middle of these, to find the actual flowers that are for the pollinators. I actually think through plant breeding that we've paid more attention to the part of this that's sterile, and we have eliminated some of the pollinator activity a lot of these hydrangeas, which is somewhat disappointing for me. We're going to talk about another one in a minute that I'll go over that a little bit more on, where I've seen less and less pollinators as we've improved the plant over time. The next group of macrophyllas are the lace caps. Lace caps have it's a flat inflorescence instead of a round inflorescence, but you can see the non-sterile flowers in the middle of it, and the pollinators have a much easier time getting to the middle of them. And then the sepals, the colorful part that's sterile, are right around the outside of that. And then the kind of macrophylla look-alike is the Hydrangeas serratas, or mountain hydrangeas, but they tend to stay a little bit smaller in our landscapes, can fit in a little bit better. Some of the macrophyllas can get quite large, 5, 6, 7 feet, in height, and the Hydrangeas serratas can be kept smaller. What you're looking at right now are some bluebird Hydrangeas serratas at a friend's house. We actually have a variegated one here that blooms, and then the foliage looks great all season as well, called a Macha variegata, one of our absolute favorites. But again, these Oakleaf hydrangeas, Bigleaf hydrangeas, and mountain hydrangeas tend to bloom from about, for us in my area here in Zone 7B, from about mid-May until about mid to late June. And then the heat tends to push them back just a bit. They probably bloom longer if you're in Zone 5 or Zone 6 for sure, well further into the summer. From there, the next hydrangea that blooms for us is another native. It's Hydrangea arborescens, or smooth hydrangeas. I grew one called Annabelle forever and ever and ever, and they're all over our neighborhood. We can walk anywhere in our neighborhood and find big, beautiful Annabelle hydrangeas. Annabelle, you can cut all the way to the ground in the late winter, and they come racing back, and they'll be 3.5 feet tall, and have these amazing flowers. Very, very showy flowers on the top of them. Pollinators absolutely love them. And so we've seen from sturdier stems, bigger inflorescences, real big improvements in smooth hydrangeas. And they've gone from kind of, plant people knew the plant, Hydrangea arborescens, to really it's become a mainstream plant that's in tons and tons of landscapes because of the improvements that we've seen in those. Those tend to bloom spot on in June for us. So we're seeing them color up right here at the 5th, 6th day of June, and they'll bloom throughout the month of June, probably a little bit into July. After those are finished, or about the time most of these are finished, is when the Hydrangea paniculatas go off for us, otherwise known as tree hydrangeas. Most of these varieties like PG and Tardiva, some of the older varieties of Hydrangea paniculatas, got 15, 20 feet tall. There's a reason they're called or referred to frequently as tree hydrangeas or panicle hydrangeas. They have a panicle-shaped flower on them, similar to the Oakleaf hydrangeas. They don't have a flat or a round ball. They have, a kind of a triangular shaped inflorescence. Some of the old varieties are actually better pollinator plants, and so that's one thing I want to point out in this video, that through plant breeding, we've made them more and more showy to us. The actual part of the flower that the pollinators love is the actual flowers that are inside of those. And again, through, we're making them more and more showy and less appealing to the pollinators. I loved my Tardiva hydrangea at my old house. It just was full of bees and interesting moths and other things. So Hydrangea paniculatas, I would say for us in my area, we're starting to see them bud up right now. It'll be right toward the end of June when we see these fully coloring up. They'll start off green, then go to white. Again, in cooler areas, a lot of these hydrangeas will take on additional color, with cooler nighttime temperatures later in the season. We tend not to get those colorations here in the south, although it's been much cooler this year, and I've seen some of the Oakleaf hydrangeas definitely going to pink a little better than they normally do. Paniculatas, incredibly showy during the summertime. These are the most heat tolerant, sun tolerant, the most indestructible. If you think hydrangeas are picky in some way, or you've struggled with figuring out where they grow, put your Hydrangea paniculatas in the sun and let them grow. Easy peasy. They're also amongst the most cold hardy hydrangeas. These can go up to Zone 3. So pretty much, and all the way down to Zone 9. So pretty much everybody watching this video can grow Hydrangea paniculatas. And again, they come in all shapes and sizes. This one's white wedding. You can see how full this plant is top to bottom. Again, most of the older varieties most of the foliage was up here, and they were kind of naked down at the bottom. look like trees. This is a variegated Hydrangea paniculata called Yuki Gesho. There's a flower bud you can see about to open on it. It's not, doesn't flower as much as the green foliage varieties, but the foliage is good enough without flowers. Just an absolutely beautiful plant. This one needs a little bit of part shade to keep it from scorching in the full sun, whereas the other paniculatas need more sun. That's probably also another thing that's limiting the flowers on it. It's not getting as much light as it needs to flower, but in enough light to flower heavy, the foliage would burn. So, you know, trying to find that sweet spot, but what a beautiful plant. One improvement that we have seen on Hydrangea paniculatas though is much sturdier stems. So we see the flowers being held up big and tall, even with wind, even with rain on them. All of these hydrangeas, because of all of this, through all the breeding and all of these inflorescences being so big, they do tend to bend over, you know, when they get water on them. And through some plant breeding, we're seeing them, you know, they're picking them for bigger, heavier stems to hold the flowers up big and tall. This video is really mostly just about flowers. I do have videos on the channel for when to prune all these different types of hydrangeas that we commonly use in ornamental landscaping, as well as just kind of all about each of the different ones. Those videos will be linked down below this video. There's an entire playlist on the channel called Hydrangeas, but this is just about flowers, and they all overlapping in a single month here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Last up is the climbing hydrangeas. I had climbing hydrangeas at my old property, don't have one here. There are some beautiful ones around the neighborhood. They look beautiful growing on small brick walls and up trees, and any place you see one. Tend to be one of the later hydrangeas to bloom in our area. It's another one that carries its flower buds through the winter, just like these Hydrangea macrophyllas, so you have to be careful, you know, careful when to prune them. Probably not as showy overall, you know, but they're so interesting. Interesting leaves. They can take a little while to get established and get blooming. You know, most of these other ones, you know, will adapt to the soil pretty quickly and get to blooming, where sometimes climbing hydrangeas can take a few years to really establish themselves in the place that you put them and get started going. But they also, toward the mid to late June is when we'll see the flowers on those here in Raleigh. So there you go. Favorite flower for the month of June is definitely just a collection of hydrangeas. What's your go-to flowering thing for the month of June in your area? Thanks for watching.